This week's Parsha Lech Lecha. I'm not going to be here this Shabbat, so I'm going to share with you an idea that's truly revolutionary. I mean, revolutionary of revolutionary. This week's Parsha Lech Lecha, is the third Parsha of the Torah, in which we're introduced to Avram and Sarai. The Torah begins, this week's Torah portion begins with Lech Lecha mi'artzecha mi'moladcha u'mibeis avicha el ha'aretz asher areka. Hashem speaks to Avraham. Avram is not Avraham yet, and commands him, go for yourself. Leave your country. Leave your birthplace. Leave your father's house and travel to the land that I will show you. Foundationally, this is the first communication between God and the prototype of all of Judaism. Therefore, we can understand this very pasuk, this very verse, as the mission statement of all of Judaism. What's so foundational about this? Well, let's put this into context. Avraham was born to Terach in an age where idol worship was prevalent and relevant to the entire generation. How idol worship began is a whole story by itself. But nevertheless, Avraham Avinu was born into a father who was one of the most sincere idolaters in his generation. He sold idols. He believed in them. Avraham Avinu, as Maimonides, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimonides Faradi teaches us in the laws of idol worship, that initially in his youth, Avraham was an idol worshiper, as per what it says in the Haggadah, in the Haggadah Pesach. Right in the beginning of the narrative, says, in the beginning our forefathers were idol worshippers. Which forefather? Avram. Avram was raised by Terach. But at 3 years old, his faith started manifesting. Parenthetically, tied into the Tanya, when the Alter Rebbe explains that the parents draw the neshama, for this reason is a question: how did Terach manage to have Avram? But again, only the animal soul, the godly soul, is from God, and it's quite possible, as Alter Rebbe himself states in the Tanya, that very lowly parents will draw very lofty neshamot. Avram at 3 years old, faith started peeking out, and he started at 3 years old. Once faith is very pronounced, the younger you are, the more the faith is relevant. As we get older, consciousness starts setting in and starts filtering into that faith. When a child asks you, who created the world? You say, God. Oh, that's good. Okay, I got it. And who created the ocean? God. I used to play a game with my oldest son, Yossi, when we used to walk to shul. Every single Friday night in Shabbos, we used to play, who did this? And we go through the same cycle, and he would always ask me to go through it. I said, Yossi, who created the universe? And he would say, Hashem. And who created the sun? He says, Hashem. And who created the moon? Hashem. Who created the planet? Hashem. Who created the oceans? Hashem. Who created the fish that swim in the ocean? And who created the seaweed? And who created It's Hashem, Hashem, Hashem. Oh, okay, it makes all the sense. Fine. Why? Because the seichel, as we learned in the previous class, only kicks in at 13. Until that 12 or 13, the faith, which is irrational, which streams from the godly soul directly, is uninterrupted, unhindered. It's when 12 or 13, 12 for a girl, 13 for a boy, is when the seichel really kicks in and starts filtering. What does that mean? He created it. I was like, how does that make sense? And this and that and that. But until that point, okay, Abraham's faith started peaking out at 3 years old, and he started exploring. And for 37 years, Abraham started searching. He started searching high and low. And again, he was an idol worshiper. But then again, in 2 weeks portion, in 2 weeks times a Torah portion, it says Avraham was old and came with days. Avraham accomplished one of the greatest accomplishments, which is time management. That every moment of his life was utilized, which is the hardest trial and tribulation a human being could go through. That every moment was being utilized correctly. And Rabbi asked a question: how do we reconcile the fact that our sages tell us, and we recite this in Haggadah of Pesach, that in the beginning Avraham was an idol worshiper? How do we reconcile that with what it says, that every moment of his life Avraham utilized? But this in itself is an instruction. The Rebbe explains that even in his downtime, even when he was born to idol worshippers, and that was his setting, he utilized that to explore and discover God through the process of elimination. First, he worshipped the sun, and then he came to the conclusion: the sun cannot be God, because the sun only shines half of the day. So God would have to be omnipotent and present at all times. And then you go to this and go to this, and process of elimination, until he was 40 years old, Avraham came to discover who God is not. And at 40, when 40 is for Bina, as our Mishnah tells us, at age 40, the talent, the soul power of understanding, of discernment really kicks in. And that's when Avraham came to a conclusion, came to fully recognize God. Avraham would teach, he would explore, and so on and so forth. Now, all of this is just parenthetical to what we're about to teach. Because, again, what we're about to teach is truly revolutionary. On every single plane, psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, on every single level.
Could you remind us when and why Sarah's name was changed from Sarah to Sarai to Sarah, and also Abraham to Abraham?
Yeah.
There were reasons. Was it anything to do with the birth?
Both Abraham and Sarai were barren. Only when Hashem added a hey to each one of them could they give birth. Mm-hmm. Kabbalah explains, and we discussed this before, Yud represents potential, wisdom, chokhmah, the first of the 10 attributes. Hey represents bina, discernment. Avram couldn't give birth, Avram could. Sarai could not, Sarah could. When Hashem added bina, development to them, that's when they would give. Prior to that, Avram, as Alter Rebbe explains in the discourse, Avram is 2 words. Avram, the great father. It's Avram Kabbalah is the superconscious, the unknowable consciousness, that even the person himself is unaware. and certainly is beyond creative powers. When Hashem gave him the hay, that gave him the ability, and so to Sarah gave him the ability to manifest. Avram represents the Chochma Sisima, like the closed wisdom that cannot manifest. In order to be able to be a father of all the nations, Hashem had to add the hay. Okay.